It's quite literally taking out your phone, sending a quick text to someone saying, hey, I just thought of you this morning. Hope all is well. You can sometimes even add a no need to respond, because what we want, and like that basic level of human connection, is just for us to know that someone's thinking about us, that like we're not just alone in the world.
Your business's success depends on relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Carl Ponto. Each week, I'll bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week, I'm really excited to connect with Zvi Band, DC-based father, entrepreneur, developer, and author. He is on a mission to combat loneliness through relationship technology. After founding and selling CRM platform Contactually to Compass in 2019, authoring Success is Your Sphere, and being named a Washington Tech Titan, he now runs the Relatable CRM and the Be More Relatable YouTube channel and newsletter. When not building tools to strengthen human connections, he can be found hosting elaborate dinner parties, constructing Lego masterpieces, tending to his overwhelming hot sauce collection, or reminiscing about his short-lived DJ career, all while balancing family life with his wife, 2 kids, and dog. Congrats on Be More Relatable, and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Thanks so much for having me today.
So I love to talk with you about what some of the big blockers are that keep people from building real relationships with their clients for their businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, thanks for having me on. And I've spent a lot of time digging into this. As you mentioned in my intro, I founded a company called Contactually, which helped people build and maintain professional relationships. And we just kept scratching our head because we saw a lot of people churn out and struggle to build relationships. And after a while, we realized it wasn't issues with our tool or the software or the stickiness or lacking the feature. It was the people, right? And I would say I've narrowed it down to 3 big blockers that like most people come up with. Number 1 is lack of time. Number 2 is lack of strategy, really, and having the right mindset. But the big one, and if you really dig down to the stories that people share and the excuses that you share for why they're not reaching out to, let's say, a past client, it really comes down to fear, right? And it's the fear of sounding weird, the fear of rejection, the fear of sounding salesy. And so I would say I've spent most of the past 6 or 7 years really trying to understand these blockers and then helping people overcome them.
And it makes sense that that fear of like rejection or coming off as awkward would be a big one, because it's easy to make excuses to ourselves more than other people. So I imagine one of the benefits of having a tool like the CRM you've built is that it helps provide some accountability, and also just making it the steps people need to take to get where they want to change their behavior, to get where the reconnect with people, make it easier. Because at the time it can seem like, oh, I have all these people I want to connect with. It's such a big thing. Like, how can I have time? Or it's kind of overwhelming and scary. Whereas if you break it down into, okay, today just do these 2 things and make it simple, after a while they've built a habit, and all of a sudden the fear is gone and the excuses go away, because one, they realize, oh, this is actually working, and it's not as big of a risk as I thought, and it's not as big of a time suck as I thought. And just it's that whole old adage of kind of breaking down the mountain into multiple little steps instead of trying to jump up to the top in one leap.
Yeah, absolutely. And to build on that, like my mantra that we run with is simple systems implemented repeatedly win. And you have to just kind of break it down that, yes, if you have 2,000 people in your CRM, that may seem like an insurmountable task. But if I say, hey, just organize 5 today and 5 tomorrow and the day after, and you focus on the consistency, all of a sudden, it just becomes a very easy task. And you're right, like CRM tools like Relatable, like if well designed, can help break down this general huge idea around relationship building into small little bite-sized chunks. What I've seen is like you still come across, we can still surface the right relationship at the right time and even suggest the right message. But at the end of the day, it's still a human being that has to press send on that send. You don't want that automated for obvious reasons. And that's where those behavioral blockers come in, like that fear of reaching out. And it makes sense knowing the way that we're deep designed, which we can obviously talk about and help overcome. But it's getting through those blockers that becomes so important.
Yeah, there's that. It reminds me a lot about what just people are the fear of being vulnerable, fear of being hurt, and they don't want to. They kind of keep their armor up and come up with excuses, and it goes back to a lot of stuff Brene Brown has talked about. Is what the first thing I popped in my head was that fear of rejection and the fact that our brains still associate rejection with death, because if you're in a tribe on the savannah, if you got kicked out of your tribe, you're doomed. And so our brains haven't changed that much since then. We're still very social animals. And so the risk of someone rejecting us, you can try and avoid that by just not reaching out. But in the long run, it ends up hurting us more than it helps. And so trying to push through that is a big challenge. Is there a way you found that helps people get through some of those blockers?
Oh, absolutely. I think there are a few things. I mean, one is, and this is what I oftentimes do, like I'll get on a call with someone and just kind of literally throw them over the wall. Like, hey, we're going to identify someone who you're afraid of reaching out to and reach out to them right now while I'm staring at you, staring at you over the phone. I focus on, I would say, like two real things. Number one is this concept that awareness yields transformation. The more we admit to ourselves, hey, I am afraid, right? I am really afraid of reaching out to this person, right? And the what ifs, and actually not just ignoring those, but leaning into those and asking yourself, and I'll ask a group of people saying, all right, what is the worst thing that's going to happen if you reach out to a client that you haven't talked in 2 years? Because to your point, Carl, right? Your amygdala is thinking like you might get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger, right? You might die in the next 24 hours if you reach out to this person. But then obviously your brain goes, like the rest of your brain goes, no, that's not going to happen. Realistically, the worst thing is that they just don't respond. Okay, what's the worst thing? And even if, like, let's actually imagine the worst thing. You reach out to a past client and you say, hey, long time no talk, hope all is well. And they respond back saying, hey, Carl, you know what? Please don't reach out to me again. That's actually a gift. Because like, cool, that's one less person I have to maintain relationships with. I can take that in my database and I can focus all my time and attention on everyone who wants to stay in touch with me. Great. So that's, I would say, like the number one thing that I really leaned into. And the second is to honestly like look around and remember this mantra that a VC gave to me a number of years ago. And I still think is like one of the coolest things in the world once you glom onto it, is this concept that most people won't, right? All of us, even myself, right, who now understands all this, even I face those behavioral blockers. And most people will end up giving up, right? Most people will find every excuse not to reach out to a past client, not to reach out to a lead, not to reach out to an old college friend. But therefore you can say, hey, you know what? If I'm the one that reaches out, if I take this little uncomfortable step, I'm further ahead than 99% of people out there. And so that's what I really get excited about, frankly, like weirdly excited about, because I'm like, well, most people are going to give up by now. So if I take this small little action, I set myself apart.
Yeah, I love that, because about the whole, if they say no, you can kind of cross them off your list. And also that saves you all the like stress and mental energy you're spending like spinning your wheels about why they haven't replied yet. So if you get that no back and say, we don't want to talk, then you just freed up a bunch of brain space and one less thing to stress about, and you probably sleep better, all that stuff, because you're not spinning your wheels. And then the second thing you said about most people won't, and that we come up with stories as to why people won't want to talk to us, but then so often when you do reach out to people, oh my gosh, I'm so happy to hear from you. It's they feel honored because you thought of them, and it's only in your own head that you're thinking that they're not going to be happy to hear from you, because so often people are in their own heads, and maybe they even were like they were stressed about reaching out to you, but they weren't able to do it. So the fact that you were the one who actually made the first step alleviates that stress on them. And so their responses, instead of, oh my gosh, can't believe they're trying to get my attention, and it's, I'm so glad they reached out, so it saved me the stress of trying to reach out and make that connection again. But they've been dying to, but they couldn't do it themselves. So like I said, the fact that so few people are able to overcome this internal struggle that everyone deals with, it's more of a seen as a refreshing joy and like a nice thing rather than a nuisance, if you go about it the right way. Like if it's like the fifth time you've texted someone in a day and they haven't replied, like, yeah, you're being annoying. But if it's like just a reach out after it's been a few months or years and they're like, oh, hey, it's great to hear from you. I'd love to reconnect, because they were, it's not nearly as bad as you're able to spin it up in your own head.
Oh, absolutely. And you actually jumped on a really key point. If I could jump in for a second, because you said a couple words that I think are really important to double click on, which is just thought of you, right? And oftentimes when we think one of the blockers that face us is that we don't want to come across as annoying or salesy or anything like that. And I say, well, don't, right? Like if what we're trying to do in terms of establishing that H2H, the human-to-human connection you mentioned in the intro, we're just trying to show that we care about people, that we're thinking about people. And this sounds crazy, and this is really uncomfortable for people to adopt at first. But oftentimes, one of the most effective strategies for maintaining relationships isn't to ask people for coffee or ask for a business update and saying, hey, what's new? It's quite literally taking out your phone, sending a quick text to someone saying, hey, I just thought of you this morning. Hope all is well. You can sometimes even add a no need to respond, because what we want, and like that basic level of human connection, is just for us to know that someone's thinking about us, that like we're not just alone in the world. And to give that gift is so powerful. So that's actually now just a routine part of, my own programming, and the things that like my clients do is like, hey, we're just going to take out our phone and just text a bunch of people, a bunch of past clients, friends, referral partners, saying, hey, I just thought of you this morning. Hope all is well. No ask, no need for anything else.
Yeah, I love that. And actually it ties into what I had a previous recording I did earlier this week with another guest. Her whole way of doing this is that what she does is when she meets with someone, or meets with a team as the first time, she's like a consultant, she'll ask for everyone's birthday, not the year, just the day. And then when it's their birthday, she'll say, hey, happy birthday, thinking of you, hope you're having a good day. And then because it's a time when people are kind of introspective and thinking about themselves, and they're oftentimes looking for some connection or some recognition, even if it's like your 47th, but not a huge milestone, but it's like you usually think about your life and your relationships, and having someone reach out and say, hey, just happy birthday, thinking about you, hope you're having a good day. It's easy to like mark it down in your calendar as a recurring thing. And it's a time when people are like I said, are looking for more connections, because it's kind of a big annual event for them. And it's something that's so easy to do these days. And like I said, most people won't. So those little gestures can be great for strengthening and maintaining relationships. And it's not something that, you said before, it requires a whole lot of effort, but it's like little things done repeatedly can make a huge difference in the long run for building these relationships that, especially if it's with a client in this like a B2B space where it's a longer term relationship, those little personal touches make all the business side of things go way more smoothly because they feel like you belong together and it's not just there for the bottom line.
Absolutely. And, that's to me the difference between a transactional relationship and a generative relationship, right? Because, if you think about, a transactional relationship, yes, it is purely focused about the business value, but even just, going to someone like, let's say a business prospect, there's a complete difference between saying, hey, just want to check in. Are you still thinking about moving forward? Versus, hey, I just thought of you today, right? Hope all's well. Just happy to check in. Those are two completely different experiences, right? One is very clearly demonstrating that we are fishing for business, and the other shows that we care about the person. Now, of course, those are not mutually exclusive, right? You can care about the person and believe that you have the skills and the value, and you would love to be able to assist them in their lives. That's totally fine, right? But to show that the human comes first, even just those small little tweaks I've seen just like make such a big difference.
Yeah, especially with the amount of automated and generative pitch slapping where people are just like reaching out and immediately trying to sell without building a real relationship or even acknowledging that the other person is a person they're so rampant these days that those personal touches that show, hey, I'm just thinking of you, I just want to see how you're doing, and treating people like a human being first and a prospect or client second is a breath of fresh air in a smoggy room. And it's something like I said, since most people are doing it, if you're trying to stand out in your marketing and your business practices, which what business isn't, going with this sort of strategy and using these sorts of tools that help you build these habits to strengthen the personal side of the relationship is a game changer.
Yeah, absolutely. And you brought up something earlier on related to building relationships too, is that there's a lot of times this discomfort or this feeling of it's hard to connect with people as professionals. And there's a lot of truth in that, right? Oftentimes comparison thinking makes us think that like what is socially acceptable is to only talk about business, right? And even when you're posting on social media or catching up with a client, that all we can talk about is business, 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 and it's not appropriate to talk about who we are as human beings. And I get it. And that's again that vulnerability that comes from sharing your real interests. That's hard, right? I actually remember one of my someone I've worked with over the years, again, top performing realtor and everything like that. But you look and like she was totally afraid of talking about her real interests. And which turns out was gardening. She was incredibly passionate about gardening. Like she's basically like, if whenever I'm not working, I am out in my garden. I don't care if it's in like December and it's in Boston. I will be out in the garden. And after a while, we kind of just talked about like, well, what would happen if, right? What would happen if you talked about your garden? And sure enough, she started sharing a little bit more, like first in like a newsletter to her clients, including a picture of her garden. She would talk about like gardening shows that are interesting, her favorite gardening tools. And yes, for a lot of people, it's like, all right, cool. Amy's interested in gardening. Who cares? But for a lot of people, that allowed them to build a deeper relationship with her because they were fascinated by it. And all of a sudden, her gifts became gardening tools, all these kind of things. And it's sharing a lot more of your own humanity that can also really separate yourself from others versus, sounding like every other professional.
Yeah. And it's something that people think that they make the mistake of thinking that vulnerability is showing weakness when really when you open up and you share more of yourself and you put yourself out there, everyone who's observing it is going to go, wow, that person showing so much strength by opening up. And it's weird how when we think about it from our own perspective, that flips. But if you see someone else doing it, you go, wow, they're so brave and strong for doing this. And it's one of those mental blocks that if you're going to succeed in business these days, it really helps to overcome those, because once you realize the reality of how you're seen by people when you open up and share the personal side of things, and also see the difference it makes in your business and how much stronger your business relationships are, you realize that all the things you're afraid of are in your head and not really a problem at all.
Absolutely. And that's when we can gleam into. And that's where I'm saying, like, listen, I'm not saying just, go online and immediately start sharing absolutely everything about your life and kind of like, your trials and tribulations and issues with the family. But, you can take these kind of like crawl, walk, run approaches. Like, what are the small little things you can do? Even just, the next time you sit down for a coffee meeting, right? Just ask the other person what book they're reading and share what book you're reading, right? Just those small little things can go a little further, because like most people are totally fine talking about the book they're reading. In fact, they're happy to. They're spending, hours, a week reading it, or a show they're watching. And that allows you to start to peel back, the layers of the onion beyond just the I'm a professional and I'm a client kind of thing.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for connecting with me today, Zvi. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection Podcast, please leave a review, and share it. If you'd like to connect with myself or Zvi, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.